At Harvard University, nestled among the ivy-covered walls and towering libraries, there lived a man named Professor Richard Alden. He was not just any professor. He was one of those larger-than-life figures who commanded respect wherever he went. With his sharp suits, perfectly combed silver hair, and an air of confidence that could fill a room, Alden was known for being brilliant, ambitious, and sometimes a little too proud of himself. His students often whispered about how he never seemed to doubt his own intelligence, even when tackling the most difficult problems in mathematics. And why wouldn't he? After all, he had spent decades solving puzzles that left others scratching their heads. One crisp autumn afternoon during a faculty meeting in the grand conference hall of the math department, something unusual happened. The professors were gathered around a long wooden table, sipping coffee and discussing various academic matters. Someone casually mentioned an old mathematical problem they had stumbled upon while flipping through dusty journals in the library archives. It wasn't anything new, it had been floating around for years, but it was infamous for being unsolvable. Many great minds had tried and failed to crack it, eventually dismissing it as either too complex or simply impossible. When the problem was brought up, Alden leaned back in his chair with a smirk. "Impossible?" he said, letting out a hearty laugh that echoed across the room. "If anyone can solve this, it's me." His colleagues chuckled nervously at his boldness, knowing full well that Alden thrived on challenges like these. They didn't take his words lightly. If anyone could make progress on such a riddle, it would be him. Still, deep down, some of them wondered if Alden was biting off more than he could chew. The problem itself was deceptively simple to describe but devilishly tricky to unravel. It involved patterns within numbers that seemed random at first glance, but hinted at hidden structures beneath the surface. Mathematicians had debated its significance for years, with some arguing it held the key to unlocking new fields of study, and others insisting it was nothing more than a dead end. Either way, it had become a kind of legend, a challenge reserved only for the bravest or perhaps the most foolish scholars. Determined to prove his point, Alden decided to dedicate the next few weeks to cracking the code. He locked himself away in his office, surrounded by stacks of papers, open textbooks, and half-empty cups of coffee. Day after day, he scribbled equations on the whiteboard, erased them, and started again. At first, he felt confident. "This will be easy," he muttered to himself as he worked late into the night. But as the days turned into weeks, his confidence began to waver. No matter what approach he took, the solution remained elusive. The harder he tried, the more frustrated he became. Eventually, Alden grew so irritated that he couldn't bear to look at the equation anymore. In a moment of exasperation, he grabbed a red marker and wrote the problem boldly on the whiteboard in his office. Then, almost mockingly, he added a note beneath it. "Solve this if you dare." It was partly meant as a joke, a playful jab at anyone who thought they might succeed where he had failed, but also a silent admission that he needed help. Or maybe it was just his way of saying, "Fine, let someone else try." Little did Alden know his challenge would soon find its way to unexpected hands. Maria Lopez, a hard-working janitor at the university, cleaned Alden's office every evening. She was a quiet woman in her early 40s with warm brown eyes and a gentle smile that put people at ease. Maria had worked at Harvard for over a decade, maintaining the pristine condition of classrooms and offices without expecting recognition. Though her job was humble, she carried herself with dignity, always ensuring everything sparkled before leaving for the night. Maria's daughter, Sophia, often accompanied her to work. At 14 years old, Sophia was a bright and curious teenager who loved learning. While her friends spent their afternoons playing video games or scrolling through social media, Sophia preferred reading books borrowed from the local library. Math, in particular, fascinated her. To Sophia, numbers weren't just symbols on a page. They were like pieces of a puzzle waiting to be assembled. She saw beauty in the way equations fit together, creating order out of chaos. Her teachers often praised her talent, though they lamented that her family's financial situation limited her access to advanced resources. On the evenings she joined her mother at Harvard, Sophia usually sat quietly in the corner of Alden's office, doing her homework or sketching shapes in a notebook. Sometimes she glanced at the whiteboard, intrigued by the strange symbols and formulas scrawled across it. One evening, as Maria dusted the shelves and vacuumed the carpet, Sophia noticed the red writing that stood out against the white background. "Solve this if you dare," it read. Beneath it was the mysterious equation that had stumped Alden. At first, Sophia didn't think much of it. She assumed it was just another piece of the professor's complicated world, far beyond her understanding. But the longer she stared at it, the more it drew her in. There was something about the way the numbers danced together, inviting her to explore their secrets. Without realizing it, Sophia found herself pulled into the challenge. That night, as her mother tidied up, Sophia began to wonder, what if I tried? Every evening as the sun dipped below the horizon and the halls of Harvard grew quieter, Sophia Lopez settled into her usual spot in Professor Alden's office. With her mother busy cleaning, Sophia had plenty of time to herself. She often brought along her school books or a tattered novel she'd borrowed from the library. But lately her attention kept drifting back to the whiteboard. The equation written there seemed to call out to her like a puzzle waiting to be solved. At first, Sophia didn't think much of it. She figured it was just another piece of the professor's work, something too complicated for someone her age to understand. But the more she looked at it, the more curious she became. The numbers and symbols weren't random. They followed patterns, almost like a secret code. Sophia loved codes. When she was younger, she used to make up her own languages with her friends, inventing rules and systems that only they could decipher. This felt similar, except it wasn't made up. It was real, and it mattered. One evening, unable to resist any longer, Sophia grabbed a scrap of paper from her backpack and began copying down the equation. At home, she didn't have access to fancy calculators or textbooks filled with advanced formulas, but she did have something just as valuable: determination. Over the next few days, she started experimenting. Using her basic knowledge of math, and a lot of trial and error, she tested different approaches, jotting down ideas and crossing them out when they didn't work. It wasn't easy. Some nights she stayed up late, staring at the page until her eyes hurt. Other times she got so frustrated that she wanted to give up. But every time she thought about quitting, something inside her pushed her to keep going. "Maybe I'm not smart enough," she told herself one night, rubbing her temples. "But what if I am? What if I can figure this out?" That tiny spark of hope kept her going. Sophia's mother, Maria, noticed the change in her daughter almost immediately. Instead of focusing on her regular homework or reading novels, Sophia spent most of her free time scribbling notes and muttering under her breath. One evening, as Maria emptied the trash bins in Alden's office, she glanced over at Sophia and raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing, Mija?" she asked gently, setting the bag aside. "Just thinking," Sophia replied, not looking up from her notebook. Her pencil moved quickly across the page, filling it with numbers and symbols. Maria walked over and peered at the paper. "Is this, math?" she asked, her voice tinged with confusion. She had always encouraged Sophia to study hard, but this level of focus was unusual, even for her diligent daughter. "Yes," Sophia said, finally looking up. "It's that problem on the board. I'm trying to solve it." Maria frowned. "The one in the professor's office?" "Mija, that's university-level stuff. Even he hasn't been able to solve it." "I know," Sophia admitted. "But I think I can do it, or at least try." Maria sighed, torn between pride and concern. On one hand, she admired her daughter's determination. Sophia had always been a fighter, refusing to let obstacles stand in her way. On the other hand, Maria worried that Sophia was setting herself up for disappointment. "You're working so hard," she said softly. "Are you sure this is worth it?" Sophia nodded without hesitation. "Mom, I feel like I'm close. Really close. I just need a little more time." Maria didn't argue further. She knew better than to discourage her daughter once she set her mind to something. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was bigger than Sophia realized. If the famous Professor Alden couldn't solve the problem, What chance did a high schooler have? Despite her doubts, Maria continued to support Sophia in small ways. She made sure Sophia had snacks during her long study sessions and reminded her to take breaks. Occasionally, she even asked questions about the equation, though she didn't understand most of the answers. "So what does this part mean?" she'd ask, pointing to a symbol on the page. "That's a variable," Sophia would explain patiently. "It represents something we don't know yet. And this squiggly line, that's a summation sign. It means we're adding things together." Maria nodded, pretending to follow along. In truth, she had no idea what any of it meant, but she loved seeing Sophia light up as she talked about it. There was a passion in her voice that Maria hadn't heard in a long time. As the weeks went by, Sophia's efforts began to pay off. Slowly but surely, she started making progress. She discovered connections between the numbers that others might have missed, thanks to her unique perspective. Unlike the professors who relied on established methods, Sophia approached the problem with fresh eyes. She wasn't constrained by traditional techniques or preconceived notions about how things should be done. To her, the equation was like a story waiting to be told, and she was determined to uncover its meaning. One night, as Maria finished cleaning Alden's office, she found Sophia hunched over her notebook, a look of intense concentration on her. "How's it going?" Maria asked, leaning against the desk. "I think I'm onto something," Sophia replied excitedly. "Look." She flipped through the pages of her notebook, showing her mother the steps she had taken. "See? If I rearrange these terms and apply this rule here, everything starts to fit together." Maria studied the pages, though she barely understood a word of it. "It looks impressive, Mija," she said honestly. "But are you sure it's right?" "I'm pretty sure," Sophia said, biting her lip. "I still need to double-check a few things, but I think I've cracked it." Maria smiled, though a part of her remained skeptical. "Well, whatever happens, I'm proud of you. Not many people would even try something like this." Sophia grinned, her confidence growing. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could succeed where others had failed. The next day, Sophia returned to Alden's office with renewed energy. As her mother cleaned, Sophia sat in her usual corner, poring over her notes. Every now and then she glanced at the whiteboard, comparing her work to the original equation. The pieces were falling into place, and she could feel the thrill of discovery bubbling inside her. By the end of the week, Sophia had completed her solution. She stared at the final page of her notebook, her heart racing. Was it possible? Had she really solved the unsolvable? She knew there was only one way to find out. That evening, as Maria packed up her cleaning supplies, Sophia hesitated. "Mom," she said quietly, holding up her notebook. "Do you think I should show this to Professor Alden?" Maria paused, considering the question. "Do you want to?" she asked. Sophia nodded. "I think so, but what if he doesn't believe me? Or worse, what if I'm wrong?" Maria placed a reassuring hand on her daughter's shoulder. "If you've worked this hard, you deserve to share it. And if anyone tries to doubt you, they'll have to answer to me." Sophia laughed, feeling a surge of courage. With her mother's blessing, she decided to take the risk. The next morning, she left her neatly written solution on Alden's desk, unsigned. It was a leap of faith, but Sophia believed in her work and in herself. Little did she know, her life was about to change, forever. The next morning, Professor Richard Alden arrived at his office with his usual brisk stride, carrying a cup of coffee and a stack of papers. He was in a particularly grumpy mood that day. His attempts to solve the equation had hit yet another dead end the night before, leaving him frustrated and restless. As he entered the room, he noticed something unusual on his desk, a single sheet of paper, neatly folded in half. It wasn't there when he left the previous evening. Curious but skeptical, Alden picked it up and unfolded it. At first glance, the handwriting looked unfamiliar, small, precise, and almost childlike compared to the bold strokes he typically used. But as he began reading, his brow furrowed in confusion. The page contained step-by-step calculations leading to what appeared to be a solution to the very problem that had haunted him for weeks. His initial reaction was disbelief. Was this some kind of prank? A clever forgery designed to mock him? But as Alden read further, his skepticism gave way to astonishment. The logic was flawless. Each step built upon the last with meticulous precision, revealing insights into the equation that he had never considered. Whoever had written this hadn't just stumbled upon an answer. They had uncovered a new way of thinking about the problem entirely. The elegance of the solution took his breath away. For a moment, Alden simply stood there, staring at the paper in stunned silence. Then, shaking his head as if to clear his thoughts, he sat down at his desk and began verifying the work. He pulled out fresh sheets of paper and retraced every calculation, double-checking each line. Hours passed as he immersed himself in the task, oblivious to the world around him. When he finally reached the conclusion, he leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his silver hair. There was no denying it, the solution was correct. Absolutely, undeniably correct. But who could have done this? Alden racked his brain, trying to think of anyone in the department, or even among his graduate students who might possess such skill. None of them came to mind. Whoever had solved the equation clearly had a deep understanding of mathematics, combined with creativity and intuition far beyond their years. Yet the handwriting suggested someone young, perhaps even inexperienced. It didn't make sense. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Alden decided to investigate. He started by asking his colleagues if they knew anything about the anonymous solution. "Did any of you see anyone in my office yesterday?" he inquired during a casual conversation in the faculty lounge. The question drew curious glances, but no one seemed to have answers. Some joked that maybe the solution had been delivered by aliens or ghosts, given how impossible the problem was supposed to be. Next, Alden turned to the administrative staff. Surely someone must have noticed something unusual. He approached Mrs. Thompson, the department secretary, who was known for her sharp memory and attention to detail. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, holding up the solution, "have you seen anyone acting strangely around here recently? Anyone who might have left this on my desk?" Mrs. Thompson adjusted her glasses and studied the paper curiously. "I can't say I've noticed anything odd, Professor Alden," she replied after a moment's thought. "Though Maria Lopez cleans your office, doesn't she? Maybe she saw something." Maria Lopez. The name sparked a flicker of recognition in Alden's mind. Maria was the janitor who kept his office spotless, often accompanied by her daughter. He vaguely remembered seeing the girl sitting quietly in the corner while Maria worked. Could she have had anything to do with this? It seemed unlikely, but Alden couldn't rule it out completely. That evening, as Maria entered Alden's office to clean, he greeted her with a friendly smile. "Good evening, Maria," he said, gesturing for her to come closer. "I need to ask you something important." Maria paused mid-sweep, looking surprised but polite. "Of course, Professor, what is it?" "Someone left this on my desk last night," Alden explained, showing her the solution. "Do you know anything about it? Did you happen to see anyone in here yesterday afternoon?" Maria shook her head firmly. "No, Professor, I didn't see anyone except Sophia, my daughter. She was here with me, like always." Alden's eyes narrowed slightly. "Sophia? Your daughter? How old is she?" 14, Maria replied, sensing where the conversation might be heading. Her expression grew cautious. "Why do you ask?" "Well," Alden hesitated, unsure how to phrase his next question without sounding accusatory. Does she enjoy math or puzzles?" Maria's face softened, though a hint of protectiveness lingered in her eyes. "Yes, she loves math, always has." "Why?" Alden sighed, rubbing his temples. "This solution, it's brilliant. Groundbreaking, really, but the handwriting looks like it belongs to someone young. I'm just trying to figure out who could have done it." Maria didn't respond immediately. Instead, she glanced toward the corner where Sophia usually sat, her lips pressed together in a thin line. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "Professor, I think you should talk to Sophia herself. She's special, and she's been working on something lately. Something big. Intrigued and more than a little skeptical, Alden agreed to meet Sophia the following day. Maria promised to bring her daughter to his office after school, though she warned him not to expect too much. "She's shy," Maria said, "and she doesn't trust easily. Please don't scare her off." The next afternoon, Sophia arrived at Alden's office with her mother by her side. She was a petite girl with wide, intelligent eyes and a nervous energy that made her fidget with the strap of her backpack. Alden greeted her warmly, doing his best to appear approachable. "Hello, Sophia," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "Your mom tells me you've been interested in math." Sophia nodded hesitantly, glancing at Maria for reassurance. "Yes, sir." "I'll cut to the chase," Alden continued, leaning forward slightly. "Someone left a solution to a very difficult problem on my desk yesterday. A problem I've been struggling with for weeks. And honestly, I'm baffled. The work is extraordinary, better than anything I could have imagined. Do you know anything about it?" For a moment, Sophia said nothing. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her backpack and her gaze dropped to the floor. Then slowly she raised her head and met Alden's eyes. "It was me," she admitted softly. "I solved it." Alden stared at her, momentarily speechless. This quiet, unassuming teenager had cracked a problem that had stumped experts for years. It seemed impossible, but then again, so did the solution itself. Clearing his throat, he asked, "Can you show me how you did it?" Sophia nodded and pulled out her notebook, flipping to the pages filled with her calculations. With surprising confidence, she began explaining her thought process. She described how she had approached the problem differently from traditional methods, using patterns and logic that came naturally to her. Alden listened intently, occasionally interrupting to ask questions or request clarification. By the time she finished, his jaw was practically on the floor. "This is incredible," he murmured, shaking his head in awe. "You've done something truly remarkable, Sophia. Where did you learn to think like this?" Sophia shrugged modestly. "I don't know. I just saw the numbers and followed where they led me." Alden chuckled, a mix of admiration and disbelief in his voice. "Well, wherever it came from, it's genius. Pure genius." As the meeting came to an end, Alden thanked Sophia profusely, promising to share her achievement with the rest of the faculty. For the first time in his career, he felt humbled, not by failure but by the realization that brilliance could come from the most unexpected places. And as Sophia left his office with her mother, clutching her notebook tightly, she couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was only the beginning. The news of Sophia Lopez's achievement spread like wildfire through the halls of Harvard University. At first, it was just whispers among the faculty, murmurs of disbelief and awe that a 14-year-old girl had solved a problem deemed impossible by some of the brightest minds in mathematics. Professor Alden himself couldn't stop talking about it. He brought up Sophia's solution during department meetings, showing her work to his colleagues and marveling at its ingenuity. "This isn't just a solution," he declared one afternoon, holding up a copy of Sophia's notes. "It's a breakthrough, a completely new way of thinking about the problem." At first, many of Alden's peers were skeptical. Some assumed it must have been a fluke, or perhaps even a prank orchestrated by Alden himself to teach them humility. But when they examined Sophia's calculations themselves, their skepticism turned to astonishment. The elegance of her approach, combined with its sheer originality, left no room for doubt. She had done what none of them could. Word eventually reached the media, and soon reporters began flocking to campus, eager to learn more about the janitor's daughter, who had outsmarted Harvard professors. Journalists interviewed Alden, who spoke passionately about Sophia's talent and potential. They also interviewed Maria, who proudly described how Sophia had spent countless evenings poring over the equation, determined to crack it despite having limited resources. "She's always been like that," Maria said with a smile. "Once she sets her mind to something, there's no stopping her." Sophia, however, wasn't comfortable with all the attention. Cameras flashing in her face and microphones thrust toward her made her uneasy. She preferred working quietly in the corner of Alden's office, far away from the spotlight. Yet, as much as she wanted to avoid the limelight, she understood the importance of sharing her story. If nothing else, she hoped it might inspire other kids like her, young people who didn't come from privileged backgrounds but still dreamed of making a difference. As the days went by, Sophia found herself becoming something of a local celebrity. Students passing her in the hallways would whisper, "Is that her, the girl who solved the equation?" Strangers stopped her on the street to congratulate her, and teachers at her high school beamed with pride whenever they mentioned her name. Even the principal invited her to give a short speech at an assembly, though Sophia politely declined, explaining that public speaking wasn't her strong suit. Despite the chaos surrounding her newfound fame, Sophia remained grounded. Her mother reminded her daily not to let it go to her head. "You're still the same person you were before all this happened," Maria told her one evening as they walked home together. "Don't forget where you came from." "I won't, Mom," Sophia promised, clutching her backpack tightly. Inside it was her precious notebook, now filled with ideas for new problems to solve. Despite everything, she hadn't lost her love for math, or her curiosity about the world around her. Meanwhile, Professor Alden continued to advocate for Sophia, determined to ensure her talent didn't go to waste. He arranged for her to attend advanced math classes at Harvard on weekends, giving her access to resources she'd never had before. He introduced her to other mathematicians, both within the university and beyond, encouraging her to share her insights and continue exploring the field. "You have a gift, Sophia," he told her during one of their meetings, "and gifts like yours shouldn't be hidden away." But Alden didn't stop there. Recognizing the barriers Sophia faced due to her family's financial situation, he decided to take action. After consulting with the dean and several other faculty members, he announced the creation of a scholarship fund in Sophia's name. The scholarship would provide financial support to underprivileged students pursuing degrees in STEM fields, ensuring that others like Sophia wouldn't have to struggle as she had. "Education is a ladder," Alden said during the unveiling ceremony. "And we owe it to talented individuals like Sophia to make sure that ladder is accessible to everyone." The announcement drew widespread praise, not only from the academic community, but also from the general public. People were moved by the idea of turning Sophia's success into an opportunity for others. Donations poured in from alumni, businesses, and even strangers inspired by her story. Within weeks, the scholarship fund had grown large enough to support dozens of students each year. For Sophia, the scholarship meant more than just recognition. It represented hope. Hope that she could continue studying math without worrying about the cost. Hope that her achievements might pave the way for others. And hope that her hard work would lead to something greater than she had ever imagined. As the semester drew to a close, Sophia began preparing for the next chapter of her life. With Alden's guidance, she applied to several prestigious summer programs designed for gifted students. To her delight, she was accepted into one hosted by MIT, where she would spend 6 weeks learning alongside other young innovators. It was a dream come true, and Sophia couldn't wait to see what lay ahead. Before leaving for the program, Sophia paid a visit to Alden's office to thank him for everything he had done. "I don't know how to repay you," she said shyly, standing in the doorway with her hands clasped behind her back. Alden chuckled, waving off her gratitude. "You don't need to repay me, Sophia. You've already given us so much. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep solving problems, asking questions, and pushing boundaries. That's all I ask." Sophia nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "I will," she promised. "Thank you." As she turned to leave, Alden called after her. "Oh, and Sophia," she glanced back over her shoulder. "Yes? Never stop believing in yourself. The world needs more people like you." With those words echoing in her mind, Sophia stepped out into the bright June sunlight, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time in her life, she felt truly unstoppable, not because of the accolades or the scholarships, but because she knew she had the power to shape her own destiny. And as long as she kept dreaming, there was no limit to what she could achieve. Years passed, and Sofia Lopez's journey took her to places she had once only dreamed of. The shy, curious teenager who once sat quietly in the corner of Professor Alden's office grew into a confident young woman with a passion for discovery. Her summer at MIT opened doors she hadn't known existed, introducing her to mentors, peers, and opportunities that fueled her love for mathematics. By the time she graduated high school, Sophia had earned a full scholarship to study at one of the most prestigious universities in the world, Harvard itself. Returning to the same halls where her story began felt surreal. This time, however, Sophia wasn't an outsider looking in. She was a valued member of the academic community. Students sought her advice, professors invited her to collaborate on research projects, and alumni praised her as a symbol of resilience and brilliance. Yet despite all the attention, Sophia remained humble, always quick to credit her success to the support of her family, her teachers, and especially Professor Alden. During her undergraduate years, Sophia continued to push boundaries. She tackled complex problems in number theory, cryptography, and artificial intelligence, publishing papers that earned recognition from experts around the globe. Her unique perspective, a blend of creativity, intuition, and rigorous logic, set her apart from her peers. While others relied on established methods, Sophia approached challenges with fresh eyes, often uncovering solutions no one else had considered. It was this innovative thinking that caught the eye of leading tech companies and research institutions, all eager to recruit her upon graduation. But Sophia wasn't ready to leave academia just yet. After completing her bachelor's degree, she decided to pursue a PhD, diving deeper into the mysteries of mathematics. Her dissertation focused on developing algorithms capable of solving real-world problems, from optimizing supply chains to predicting natural disasters. Once again, her work garnered widespread acclaim, earning her awards and invitations to speak at international conferences. Despite her growing fame, Sophia never lost sight of why she loved math in the first place. It was a way to make sense of the world, to find beauty in patterns, and to help people in tangible ways. As her career progressed, Sophia became more than just a mathematician. She became a role model. She frequently visited schools in underserved communities, sharing her story and encouraging students to believe in their potential. "You don't need fancy tools or expensive resources to be smart," she told them during one such visit. "All you need is curiosity and determination, and maybe a little bit of courage." Her impact extended beyond classrooms. Through the scholarship fund named in her honor, Sophia helped hundreds of students access higher education. Many of these recipients went on to achieve remarkable things, crediting Sophia not only with financial support, but also with inspiration. One recipient, a young woman from rural Texas, wrote Sophia a heartfelt letter thanking her for proving that dreams could come true, even against overwhelming odds. Reading those words brought tears to Sophia's eyes, reminding her of how far she'd come and how much further she could go. Eventually, Sophia returned to Harvard, not as a student but as a professor. Standing in front of a lecture hall filled with eager faces, she couldn't help but smile. Life had come full circle. On her first day of teaching, she walked up to the whiteboard and wrote the same equation that had once stumped Professor Alden. Beneath it, she added a note. "Solved by Sophia Lopez, the girl who proved nothing is impossible." Her students laughed when they saw it, but there was admiration in their eyes. Over the years, Sophia inspired countless young minds, instilling in them the same belief that had driven her forward, that anyone, regardless of background or circumstance, could achieve greatness if they dared to try. Professor Alden, now retired, attended one of Sophia's lectures shortly after she joined the faculty. Sitting in the back row, he watched with pride as she guided her students through a particularly challenging problem. When the class ended, he approached her, his eyes twinkling with warmth. "You've done well, Sophia," he said, shaking her hand. "Better than I ever imagined." "Thank you," Sophia replied, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you." Alden waved off her gratitude with a chuckle. "Nonsense. You did the hard part. I just gave you a nudge." Their conversation lingered in Sophia's mind long after Alden left the building. She realized how much she owed to the people who had believed in her along the way. Her mother, who worked tirelessly to provide for their family, her teachers, who nurtured her talents, and Alden, who had recognized her potential when she didn't even see it herself. Together, they had created a foundation strong enough to carry her through life's challenges. As the years went by, Sophia's legacy continued to grow. She published books explaining complex mathematical concepts in simple terms, making the subject accessible to a wider audience. She collaborated with scientists, engineers, and policymakers to tackle global issues like climate change and healthcare disparities, and she never stopped learning, always seeking new ways to expand her knowledge and share it with others. One evening, as Sophia stood on the balcony of her office overlooking the Harvard campus, she reflected on her journey. From the quiet evenings spent scribbling equations in a notebook to the international stages where she now spoke, every step had been shaped by perseverance and faith. She thought about the equation that had started it all, the one scrawled in red marker on Alden's whiteboard, and smiled. What had seemed impossible at first had led her to a life she could never have imagined. In that moment, Sophia understood something profound. Success wasn't about solving every problem or achieving perfection. It was about embracing the unknown, taking risks, and trusting in your ability to adapt and grow. For Sophia, the unsolvable equation hadn't just been a challenge, it had been a reminder that the greatest discoveries often lie just beyond what we think is possible. And so Sophia Lopez continued to inspire, teach, and innovate, leaving behind a legacy that would endure for generations. Her story served as proof that brilliance knows no boundaries, and that sometimes the most extraordinary achievements come from the most unexpected places.